Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast. I know so many of you listening to this show love your local bar, your local restaurant, maybe your local hotel, and have so many fond memories of time in hospitality businesses. This is the podcast where we get to chat to the human beings behind the scenes of that industry. Maybe the chefs or the bakers or the coffee roasters or the gin distillers or the craft brewers or the entrepreneurs, but all doing an amazing job of making sure that hospitality stays interesting and the big, dull, formulaic brands do not take over our high street. Please enjoy the show. In this week's conversation, we are chatting to Alex Kammerling, founder and creator of Kamm & Sons. Now, before we get going, I just wanted to let you know that we had a smidgen of a sound problem with this recording, so the audio quality is not where I usually like it to be, but I think the sheer determination of this week's guest will see us through. I've said it before, and I'll say it again for good reason. The world of food and drink would be a much duller place without the dogged perseverance and amazing palates of crazy people like Alex. For around 3 years, the flat he shared became home to countless little bottles, each filled with different flowers, roots, barks, berries, and spices, all gently macerating in alcohol. Why? Because Alex was determined to create Britain's first ever standalone aperitif, in the tradition of an Aperol or a Campari, but with a unique flavour all of its own. He started with 100 different botanicals and spent months and months whittling them down, hence lots of little bottles. Most of us would never go down this alchemy route. We'd just sit back and order another G&T or a Pimm's. So what drove Alex, and did it work out the way he wanted? Find out now in this week's conversation. Alex, thank you so much for sparing the time to come on the podcast this week. Much appreciated.
Pleasure. Nice to be here.
So, can you just explain where on planet Earth are we, and are you a local man?
We're in Clapham. We're in Clapham Common, just off the Common. Very nice sunny day outside.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there.
And I've come from North London, from Finsbury Park.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to come into what you do now and this fascinating kind of story of this aperitif that you've created, which I'm looking forward to doing. But before we do that, I just want to go back in time a little bit. Can you just explain to me, what was your initial interest in cocktails? Where did that come from?
I think my interest, I've always been interested in spirits and cocktails as opposed to beer and wine. I was never really, actually growing up, I was never really much of a drinker. I never really saw the point. I didn't really get it until I kind of started working in bars, and I could see how much fun the bartenders used to have in bars. Like, well, that's the job that I want when I as old as I, as soon as I can have the legal age to work in a bar, I want that job. So I started working in the bars, and I guess just kind of got a taste for spirits and I guess because the cocktails are very sugar based, so as a younger, a male adult, just liked sweeter things, and so I guess that kind of like is an easy stepping stone into kind of appreciating spirits. So my cocktail career started when I was 18, I guess.
Okay, so this is when you were studying as a part-time job in essence, exactly. And carried on through uni. But
carried on through, yeah. I mean, so I've always kind of come back to bartending. It's really good fun. You meet some great people. You get to meet people all the time. You're working with cool people, a lot of creative people as well that have come from acting or dance or photography or art photography, whatever. So yeah, there's always a nice crowd of people in there, and so I was always doing that as a job while I was making art. That was my main thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people in this sector come from that creative industry. I always say with my team is that fundamentally they either carry crayons or a musical instrument of some kind, which again is something that I love. But that's what you did at uni. It was. Went
to art school. Yeah, did a kind of 2-year foundation in sort of general art and design, and sort of specialised in three-dimensional design, which was metalwork, which covered everything from sort of jewellery through to forge work. But actually, I came out of college doing sculpture.
Okay.
I had a sort of fine art studio, and I was making sort of quite well-made, design-focused pieces, but they were art pieces.
Amazing.
And had some relative success selling them, but living in London, you need to sell a lot of art to pay the bills and pay the studio rent. So worked in bars to help that that passion.
Yeah, it's a shame in both hospitality and art. They're both frustratingly difficult industries to make a decent wedge of cash out of, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't
but
it?
it's not all about making money, is it? As long as you can pay the bills, then,
Absolutely.
and you're doing what you love doing. That's the important bit for me.
Was there some stuff through the arts? I suppose I'm thinking particularly around maybe the branding element that were useful to actually at least recognise what's.
I mean, I've always been keen on brands and branding. I've always enjoyed. I always go to the cinema early so I can see the adverts. I like the adverts. I like the way stuff's sold. I like the way it's packaged. I've always been into that. So I've definitely put loads of creativity into not only making liquids, but also the branding and also the marketing as well. There's some fun things you can do with the way that you talk and the way that you sell and the activations. We've had little cocktail bars in cocktail sheds and a little bar with a bike on it and a bar that was a Punch and Judy stand. So you basically come out to the bar and it's the Punch and Judy stand and we'd make cocktails. Punches,
amazing.
Obviously. So it's a lot of fun you can have if you've got a sort of creative background, you can take it in lots of different directions.
Yeah, I'm always envious of people that can build things because I love sort of our industry because it's so creative and because the environments are so different. But unfortunately, I'm really crap at actually making anything. So it must be nice to be able to bring
stuff. That's the thing. I like using my hands to make something. Cocktails was one of those things. So I can put all these ingredients together in a creative way and make something and it looks nice and it tastes nice and the customer enjoys it. And that gives me a bit of satisfaction, it's fun, everyone's having a nice time and we've all made some money. Right?
Yeah, nice.
Apart from the customer who spent some.
And where did you hone that skill? Because you've taken this to an extreme, which we'll hear about in a minute. But you started off, yes, I like sweet sugary drinks, but where did you actually turn that into a skill and develop your palate?
I guess I sort of working in bars, you have a set of recipes that you follow, and you make those recipes, and then after a while you get a bit bored, and you start taking one thing out and putting another thing in. And actually, if I change this around and change the style of the drink, and then you start making up new drinks. And when I started, there wasn't really the industry was quite small. You could count them. This is kind of mid-90s in London. I sort of moved in, and we did cocktails in Bournemouth where I grew up. But actually, when I moved to London, that was when I really sort of kicked up a gear. Things like espresso martinis, brambles, Russian spring punches, mojitos, caipirinhas. These were the drinks that the cosmopolitans were all being drunk at that time. And it was fair, they were the classic drinks and everyone would start drinking those. And then people started to experiment a bit more and started to be a bit more adventurous and there were some cocktail competitions on. So I've entered some comps and won a few competitions and got sent around the world to these amazing places. Went skiing in South France, went to Jamaica, went to New Zealand on a trip. Like sort of these amazing things, and I was like, "Hang on, this is great! I'm having a great time." Like, I could either kind of sweat in my studio, making art all day and not selling much of it, or I can pursue this career in drinks and get all these great perks. And so when life gives you lemons, you make a Tom Collins. So I sort of I won a few comps. I started doing some writing. And that kind of grew from that point on. Then I started doing some work on some brands, so a brand ambassadorship. Worked on a gin company, and that sort of just led to working for another bigger brand, Grey Goose vodka. So that's sort of no, it wasn't a full-time job, but it was almost full-time, and I was the first ambassador for a big company. It was a bit more corporate, and that's the sort of point that I thought maybe I could make something. Maybe I could do. Who creates drinks brands? And at the time, wasn't really anyone. It was not a path that you could ever go down. There was. It seemed like it was only the big drinks companies that made new products, the Diageos and the Bacardi Martinis and the some Beam Suntories and things. And so I just sort of thought, well, let's give it a go and let's try and start playing around, and that's where the idea started, and then we launched, and I was like, oh, I've got a business.
yeah, no, amazing, and we'll come back to that in a second. But you took the cocktails, like you say, quite a long way. You ended up travelling a lot, but you also did a book, I think.
Yeah, I wrote a cocktail book for the BBC. That was great, really good fun.
And were these had to be different kind of cocktails? These were your incarnations rather than just the classics?
Actually, me again, sort of creatively didn't want a publisher to have creative control on it. I wanted to create my own book, so I found a photographer and I found a design company, and we produced this, pretty much did the whole book. And then we took it to different publishers, and the BBC were like, yeah, great, perfect, don't need to change anything on it, just bring it back in 6 months, finished book. And so so I did, and that was great. It was very nice. It was a hell of a process, writing and publishing a book, but it was great fun, and yeah.
Did it sell well?
It did all right. You know, the thing that I learned about publishing is that if you're not making books all the time, you know, your books are just coming into the market constantly every few months. If there's a new cocktail book or a new recipe book, and if you're not adapting and changing, then you know that original book gets sort of sold and forgotten about. The new ones come on, and they get the best displays and everything else. So I didn't want to do it again. I was like, I'm only going to do one book, and it was fine. Made some cash out of it, and it was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to do it again.
Okay. Yeah.
It was like tick.
And that process of innovation, I suppose, and what I was chatting with Kirsty, because obviously you're part of Love Drinks that we'll come on to, but all too often, you know, innovation for innovation's sake, I suppose. How did you strike that balance between not just trying to come up with something that was different, but that kind of respect for the kind of classic? And I think you've done that again with your product.
Yeah, I mean, so my kind of inspiration was the aperitif culture, and I was inspired by Aperol and Campari, and I really loved that culture, but I also wanted to make something that was a bit healthier. That was the starting point. I wanted to make a healthier booze, and it turns you know, people can't get their heads around the idea that booze can be healthy, but in moderation it can be, and also the things that you can put into the alcohol can be healthy. So I was looking at ingredients like ginseng and manuka honey and goji berries and echinacea and all these things that have been used in the past as, you know, as medicines, and alcohol is a really good way to extract the properties of those plants and botanicals, and it delivers, you know, into the bloodstream. So medicines were alcoholic. A lot of medicines were alcoholic, and you wouldn't have lots of it, but you'd have some of it. You know, bitters, Angostura and Chartreuse and Benedictine and all these kind of old medicinal liqueurs and things. So kind of partly inspired by, you know, that history of alcohol as medicine, partly by the aperitif culture, and partly by things like Pimm's, which I just thought was a bit old and boring. I just thought it could be better. And so I took all of those, and gin really as well. You know, there was you know, a lot of interest in gin. There is a ridiculous amount of interest in gin now. There was still, you know, 15 years ago.
I was going to say, how long ago was this?
Yeah, about 13, 14 years ago actually.
Okay.
And you know, I was working with this gin company at the time, and I thought, well, if I can make something like a gin, but sort of take some inspiration from the Italian aperitif culture, but also take some inspiration from this history of alcohol as medicine, and sort of put those ideas together to form a brand. So that was the starting point.
Okay, because it really is the kind of, like, I don't know, taking your, and this is why I love this industry, I suppose, is that somebody in our industry will always get geeky about something. It doesn't matter if it's coffee or if it's a particular booze or it's a gin, but I just love the fact that people will take things to an extreme, which is literally what you did, isn't it? Because you started with something like 100 ingredients. Can you just explain?
Yeah, I just kind of collected. I did as much research as I could to find out the ingredients of, you know, Jägermeister and Chartreuse and, you know, gins and bitters and all sorts of things. Anything that's been used, any botanical that's been used in the past, either as medicine or as an ingredient for a cocktail or a spirit, I got hold of. And I sort of macerated each one of those individually just to work out the flavour. I've never really done anything like that before. I'm not a botanist. But I wanted to just find out what those flavours were like when they were infused, when they were added with, you know, with alcohol, with water, with sugar, just to understand the flavour profiles, and also then at the same time doing some research on each botanical. So, you know, what are the properties of ginseng? What does it do to the body? How does it work? What benefits are there? So it was this kind of combination of, there's the ingredient, this is the flavour. Is it useful? Yes, no. Does it taste like shit? No. Great, cool. It's got a chance of going in. It's kind of whittled it down from 100 to 45 in the end.
Over what time period?
Well, the kind of the initial stage was probably a good year or so of just macerating botanicals and trying sort of refining the ones I wanted to use, but then actually getting the recipe right was another sort of 4 years after that. So sort of from start, from idea to launch was 5 years.
Yeah.
There was a little, you know, at the end there's a bit of, you know, commercialising a recipe, but the recipe was probably 3.5, 4 years just to get it right. I was working almost full time for Grey Goose at the time, so it's kind of weekends, evenings, whenever I could just catch a moment to test it. And, you know, you're sending off samples and you know, and getting things distilled, and there's lots of backwards and forwards and speaking to suppliers and, oh, this isn't going to work, we need to try this, and, you know, aging stuff and shelf life testing and all that sort of stuff, you know, red tape.
Yeah, it's why it's just, I love it because it's such a phenomenal amount of effort. And when I was reading your story, I was like, wow, that's just brilliant that somebody puts that amount of time and amount of effort. And all the way through that, did you know what you were kind of ultimately wanting to create? Did you have an idea in your head?
I mean, I kind of had an idea of the kind, the kind of flavours that I was looking for. But it's tricky. You know, if you think about something like Campari, which is really was the I guess the most sort of important flavour profile and brand that for me as an inspiration. So I kind of took that as a starting point. And that's just an amazing recipe. It's 60 ingredients which come together and form one flavour. You know, you can't pick out rhubarb root and gentian and orange peel. It's pretty hard unless I tell you in it, and then you can smell it and you can get it. But so the Campari created it in 1860, and it's 60 botanicals that just they come together to form Campari. You know, that's the flavour. When you try it, it's definitely Campari. Now that's genius. You know, how do you create a new flavour? With using flavours that already exist, and so that was I didn't want to copy Campari, but I wanted to take inspiration from that and say, okay, so what new flavours can I use, and what new flavour can I create using these botanicals which have been around for thousands of years. So that's the bit that was so hard. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist as well, so it was like back and forwards, trialing as well. I took this kind of early samples to some friends' weddings and said, look, I'll just do you a little aperitif bar. I won't kill anyone. Just let me at them. So I just brought a few bottles along and tried it with bitter lemon and with tonic. And what do you think of this? Do you like this? Just to gauge people's reactions and things. It's like, okay, well, I need to change this about it. I need to change this, and sort of refined it over a few sessions.
Do you think you've got a particularly, I suppose, focused palate to be able to kind of try all of those things?
Yes, that's. I think I've got a good palate for flavours, for tastes. So I can pick up flavours quite easily. I'm good at putting them together. I mean, I only say that because people used to always appreciate my cocktails. People used to enjoy them, and used to get lots of compliments about it. So I thought, I'm quite good at this. So maybe I can take those skills of making cocktails into making a spirit. It can't be that much harder, can it? Anyway, it was. I think the hardest thing I've done.
Yeah.
Is creating a recipe and bringing it to market.
Well, because most people wouldn't go and to do well, I think that genuine authenticity behind the product and the story is key. So a lot of people, take shortcuts, and it's like we, touched on earlier with gins. There's so many new gins on the market, and then people start doing flavoured gins and don't get Kirsty's chatting about pink gins and stuff like that, because she goes, so too many people think that, I'm good at making cocktails, or I'm good at making some booze, or I like booze and I'm going to go off and do this. But not many people take 5 years to test 100 different ingredients in different ways, which I think is bloody brilliant, and that's why the product deserves to kind of to be successful, because it's got some genuine graft in there. So when you're on that journey and you're testing all these different things, were there any memories of any stuff that quickly stood out and you went, oh my god, like how does that ever make it into a drink? It's horrendous. Or anything that you were surprised by when you went, it's bloody lovely.
Things like echinacea. When you try echinacea root, it's pretty foul. It's very herbal. It's quite bitter. A lot of them are quite bitter as well. Campbell's has got bitterness in it. I deliberately put bitterness is quite a key element to it. We could have a whole chat about bitterness if you want. But yeah, some of them. So like things like valerian. We've had valerian before. It's good for sleep, and it smells awful. It just smells really bad. But if you want to make something that's help you sleep at night, it's really good. Echinacea is the other one. Those two spring to mind in terms of like they are not nice, but you can put them in small amounts, and you can still get some of there are elements of that you can take out. It's a balance.
Did they go onto the not in list, or you?
Valerian didn't make it on, but echinacea did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it brings the bitter specifically.
The bitterness, but also just it's good for you. Echinacea is a health tonic, so I wanted to sort of like pack it full of as many good things as possible.
Okay. And on the flip side, any that stood out as instantaneously being particularly good, where you said, right,
the ginseng, the key botanical is ginseng. I've actually got 4 types of ginseng in there, and the ginseng, when I tried it, I didn't really know. I'd heard of ginseng, but I'd never tried it. I didn't know what it was, and I obviously did a lot of research. And as soon as I tried it, I just like that's a flavour that I've never had before. It doesn't taste like anything else. So that was the starting point. I was like, okay, cool. This is good. This is a good thing. It helps metabolize alcohol from the bloodstream. It's good for blood flow, for energy, for brain function, for liver damage, and all this great stuff. Whether all that stuff is proven or not, I can't say, but it's been used for thousands of years. The Chinese have been using it. In Korea, they use it all over the world actually now, but it's obviously originates in Asia. So it's super useful, and also just had a flavour which I wouldn't say ginseng was a delicious flavour, but it's a unique flavour. So what I did is I kind of take that unique, it's got quite an earthy quality to it. And I sort of took that earthiness as the kind of base note, and then I've added layers of flavour, so sort of woody notes and aromatic and herbaceous, and then sort of the top, the light floral, the blossoms and the citrus peels and things. So I've kind of balanced all of those out. So you kind of using these 4 types of ginseng as the main ingredient.
I really like that description, and I read it when I was doing a little bit of research. But that idea of it almost coming from the roots, and that's where the earthy flavours too, and then much more to the top of the flower or the tree, and the lighter flavours.
It's quite a nice way to think about. It's you're using nature. It comes from the ground, and things like ginger and ginseng and lots of other roots that come out of the ground have that earthy flavour. I mean, not all of them do, but a lot of them do. And then barks of trees like cinchona bark, for example, which has been used as an anti-malarial. It's the thing that's in tonic water. The quinine comes from. It's woody. It's the bark of a tree. It has a woody flavour, and then leaves have that kind of that green herbaceous quality, and then the flowers are they're floral. They're light, they're aromatic. The fruits are citrus. They're fruity. They're
Yeah.
So berries as well get that kind of fruitiness. So it was all of these things. I wanted to encapsulate that whole of tasting a bush or tasting a tree kind of idea.
Yeah, nice.
So the idea was that the product takes you on a bit of a journey. You taste it, and there's lots of things going on, and it's got this kind of nice honeyed sweetness where you're putting the honey in there to sweeten it, and the finish is the bitterness helps the flavour linger for longer. The more bitterness you have in your palate, the more the flavours will kind of stay in your mouth. So it gives that length of flavour. So balancing all of those flavours with that sort of honey bitterness was the key.
Right. And you're doing this, I've sort of got images in my mind of a sort of slightly crazed professor with lots of little test tubes and stuff like that. But you're doing this fundamentally in your flat.
I was renting at the time in Highbury, and I had sort of jars of alcohol, pots and little infusions just dotted around the shelves and windowsills and the cupboards and stuff. Flatmate wasn't too happy about it. But anyway, it was cool because, she got to test and
exactly.
Stuff. She's got a drunk occasion. She was quite happy with that.
Yeah, good tester. And although you said you didn't write another book, it feels like that level of, there can't be that many people with that knowledge who've tested 100 different ingredients in lots of different forms and noticed their kind of flavour profile and health benefits and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like you should.
Maybe.
Sometime. Have you kept any notes?
I've got spreadsheets actually with with all of these ingredients and and all the kind of notes and flavour profiles and stuff.
I love it, and it sounds insanely complicated. Were there any points when you just you felt overwhelmed and thought, this is insane? I've got, where the bloody hell do I start to turn this into a drink?
Year or two in, I just was like, where am I going with this? This is just like, what am I doing? I just couldn't find a way with it at all. And I was like, okay, I just need some time off. Went to India for a couple of months, just travelling, and then came back, refreshed and I hadn't thought about it at all. And I came back and I just felt I just needed a break. Came back and then just the project carried on, and I sort of found a way with it. At that point as well, I'd also brought this big wooden cow's head. Cows are holy in India. Brought this cow head back in this suitcase, this huge grey thing, and it's still on my wall in my front room. And I sort of had that up and put that up, and it was kind of my lucky motto, emblem, and actually went into my bottle. That's the cow on the label there, and the little cow's head. So this one, I think it's a gazelle or a springbok. It's a cow.
Yeah, modelled on something you bought back.
So the project just kind of went on from there. So.
Okay. Yeah, and was it very much? Yeah, I can imagine. And was it very much an evolution, or was there kind of I'm trying to think how you add that many different ingredients layer by layer by layer, and is there a bit where you go, okay, this is evolving in the right direction, or was there a particular mix where you said, bang, that's it?
I think I got into quite a habit of every weekend I'd be like, okay, I need to test my new batch. Sit down, listen to some music, and sort of test it out. And actually, there was one point where I was testing it, and I had one, and I'd kind of forgotten that I was testing it. And I poured another one, and I think I had 3, and I was like, hang a minute, that's delicious. I've been really enjoying that. I think that is the one, and then so I did. It was one of those kind of it obviously been working it for a while. It was that kind of like, okay, I think we're done. This is the time to stop. It's really delicious. I've enjoyed it all night. That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So up into then, were you literally sort of take out an ingredient, add an ingredient, take out 5, add 5? How do you go through
trial and
that?
error, basically, just a load of trial and error. I would. It's funny because it was a while ago now, and it's kind of blurred into one. But it was. I just remember it being really hard. I had to really concentrate. It wasn't like something that it wasn't particularly easy. It was it just needed a lot of thought and a lot of going back to other products as well. So it's okay, try this, and then I've got to give it some reference points. And I need to try Campari, I need to try Pimm's, I need to try Chartreuse, I need to try some gin. Okay, where does it fit in that scale? And is it in between those? And sugar contents and all those sort of ABVs, different strengths, and just a lot of different, lots of little bottles.
Yeah. Okay.
Hundreds and hundreds of little bottles.
So that kind of brings it to fruition. So what did you end up with then after that journey? Can you just describe, what is the drink and how do you make it?
So when I launched it, actually, I called it, it was originally Kammerling's Ginseng Spirit when I first launched it. And so it's changed a couple of times, but the liquid is exactly the same. But it's made like a gin, so it's distilled like a gin. Other aperitifs are macerated in alcohol and wine. So you put the botanicals into the spirit, you leave them for a certain period, the alcohol extracts the flavours, and then you just filter out the botanical, like making tea, essentially, but with alcohol. But I actually just still this. So the botanicals go into the still, they go into a wheat-based spirit, and they get loaded on a Friday. They macerate over the weekend just for the alcohol to kind of extract as much of the flavour as possible, and then on the Monday they get distilled. Or it gets distilled on the Monday, so it kind of has a weekend to marry in there. That gets distilled, and then the distillate comes out in the same way that the gin would come out, totally clear, about 82% ABV, and then to give it, because it's got some colour, it's got some bitterness, and it's got some sweetness which you can't distill. So I do a separate little infusion. So I use the natto seeds, which are a natural colorant. Don't want to put any numbers in, don't want to put any nasties in. With honey, so I sort of blend honey and natto seeds and wormwood and gentian, which are very bitter, and sort of macerate those for 4 weeks, which I've obviously done before. So there's a kind of bittersweet infusion that then goes into the distillate. So it's a 2-part process, a maceration and a distillation. They go together. Then we add a little bit of sugar just to sort of smooth it off, and then water to 33%. We let it sit for 2 weeks just to marry, and then we bottle it. So it's basically, in between kind of gin making and bitters, something in between of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So designed as an aperitif, why was that particularly important to you?
I just thought that was a good place to focus. The aperitif culture in this country has only just been growing in the last kind of 10 years. Aperol is the kind of driver of that. Campari and Aperol being the drivers, but they haven't really started marketing until recently. So the Aperol spritz was not a thing when I was still working in bars full time. It's only recently they've done that advertising and made it a thing, which is great, and it's helped me. But obviously, we're the British version of Aperol. We're trying to be that that sort of go-to British aperitif. So yeah, it's relatively new, but what I love about that space is that it's just the perfect time to enjoy a lower alcohol drink that has lots of flavour and sort of stimulates the palate. The idea that aperitif comes from the Latin apertura, to open, for aperture and camera, to open the stomach up in preparation for food. So the aperitif culture I love because it's very sociable. Finish work, spend time in the sun, or just before dinner, having a little kind of small or long, a bitter aperitif that tastes great and just kind of really wakes you up and gets your palate, your kind of juices going before dinner. And I love that little, that moment. That moment was great. So that was the focus. It's like, okay, we're gonna, because it's great in cocktails and it's great after dinner as well. But you can stick it in your Bloody Marys if you want for breakfast. But for me, the aperitif moment, that's sort of like 5 to 7 o'clock point. Finish work, have a drink.
Yeah, I hadn't realised that, to be fair, about the history of the aperitif, although when I was reading. But yeah, I again love that as a restaurateur. I love the idea of kind of, you know, preparing the palate for the food. It would be nice to see that tradition come back, I guess, because it's not, you know, it's still niche.
The gin and tonic is we don't really think of it as an aperitif, in the same way that the Italians think of Campari as an aperitif, but, you know, it is. It's an alcoholic drink which is served before eating that gets the gastric juices going. You know, the tonic water is where the bitterness is. And the bitterness is the key, because that's the thing that kind of gets your saliva ducts watering, and that's the thing that's, you know, signals to your stomach to get all your gastric juices going. So there is some kind of science behind it. But yeah, no, the aperitif is great, and then we should be drinking more of them.
Yeah.
As opposed to pints after work.
Yeah.
Have a little gin and tonic, have a little Negroni, have a little spritz, you know. It's a lovely tradition.
And that does seem to be changing, I think, doesn't it? If you go back, certainly 20 years ago, we were all probably, you know, just drinking pints of, you know, crappy foreign imported lager probably. But, you know, there's been a huge growth in the kind of, you know, the pale ales and much more kind of hoppy and interesting flavours. But, also a growth in the spirits market. And you alluded to it just now. So actually the Aperol Spritzer is a benefit. Why is that?
The Aperol Spritzer is a benefit
to you, and kind of presumably the awareness of
aperitifs. We haven't got
aperitifs.
the budgets that Campari have got. Campari owns Aperol now, so they spend a huge amount of money. You know, billboards, the festivals, they have big tents of festivals, orange umbrellas outside. You know, we don't have those kind of budgets. We're a small family business, so but the, you know, so for me coming into a market where the aperitif was quite small, I had to kind of really be a voice for education on the aperitif and the culture of that, as well as the brand. Whereas, you know, Campari and Aperol come along and they're like, aperitif culture, you know, shout it from the rooftops, which is good for me, because I can come along behind and be like, you've heard of an Aperol Spritz? Well, ours is a Brit Spritz. It's a British version, you know, it's an easy sell. So that's nice, but obviously it'd be nice to have a bit more budget to be able to, like, you know, follow up in the same way that Aperol.
It's been interesting though, and something I hadn't really thought about until I've interviewed people in a number of sectors, whether it be gin or whether it be coffee or whether it be beers, and actually how often that's come up, that the kind of big brands, which I suppose is my gut instinct is always to support, you know, the kind of little guy and that entrepreneurial spirit. Actually, they're a great stepping stone, and they do lead you into the kind of the higher end and the niche. Ultimately, which is it becomes a good thing, which is one that I hadn't necessarily appreciated. So ultimately the name becomes Kamm & Sons rather than Kammerling, and you focused a little bit again around the story and it being British, but there ended up being a family link. And so can you just explain where does the family history come through?
There was always a family link. It was really a trademark issue that I had with the German brand called Kammerling. Let's not go into that. Anyway, a steep learning curve in trademark law in the first year. But look, there was always the story was always there, and that was that my great grandfather, who lived in Vienna, had a confectionery factory. Actually, he was working in this factory and then ended up buying it with his business partner. And he used to make chocolates and sweets and all these sort of things. And actually, growing up as a kid, I was just told that my great granddad was Willy Wonka, kind of like a Willy Wonka type, you know, character. We had these chocolates, and that was true to a certain extent. But he also made these little herbal cough sweets, which he gave to my granddad as a kid. And I didn't know anything about this until I gave my granddad the first try of the recipe. And so, you know, 5 years in, gave my granddad, you know, yeah, Grandpa, try this. They don't really drink much, my family. They're pretty teetotal. But anyway, had a little try, and he was like, oh, this is interesting. It reminds me of something. And he couldn't put his finger on it immediately. And then a few days later, it called me up and was like, I thought what it was. My dad used to give me this little sweet when I had a cold. And it tastes like this. And I just thought it was amazing. You know, the fact that the power of smell and taste can take you back to being he's 95 now. And, I mean, he was in his late 80s when he tried it. But he was a sort of 5-6-year-old boy, you know, growing up in Vienna. So anyway, dedicated to my great granddad. My dad, I've kind of pulled him out of retirement to help me on bits. My brother designed the bottle. My cousin did my first website. So there's been a lot of Kammerling sons involved in the business. So I'm one of the sons, basically.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's my business. I founded it, but I've kind of pulled in family help.
Yeah. Nice. Has that worked well, working with family? Because that can go one or two ways.
Great. I mean, we don't work in the same office. He works in his office in Weybridge, and I work in London. But we communicate all the time, and yeah, it's great. We trust each other. We know we can be honest with each other. There's no bullshit. It's straight down the line.
Yeah, perfect. And then you mentioned then as well, just bringing your parents in, and there's been a sort of a slight evolution of another product, I think, that they help produce. Can you just explain about that?
So I started making gin. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I was being persuaded through all corners. And I guess it was kind of a bit of a challenge for me. I used to work for a gin company. I love my gins. I launched Camm because I didn't want to make a gin, and now I'm making a gin. But if I can I just wanted to try and make the best gin I could, which is quite a challenge. There's a lot of really good gins on the market now, and there's a lot of gins which have great stories, great heritage and stuff. And so I just wanted to make one with some substance and also just a little point of difference as well. So that was a 2-year process just trying to make that. Actually, that was not quite as hard as Camm, but still, I think I lost myself a little bit, and just in that whole sort of I need to make a great gin, and I think I was just backwards and forwards on recipes and try this, and I just got a bit obsessed about it. But the product is great. I'm really pleased with this.
And it makes sense. I can definitely understand. Well, how long ago was that you came up with the gin?
We launched that last year.
Okay, so there has been such a growth, but it would seem silly in some ways to waste all of that knowledge that you had tasting and all those different botanicals and all those different ingredients. And I thought
it was going to be fairly easy from the experience.
Well, that's why I was surprised when you said it took another 2 years.
But it's just I had to basically. I thought I could take the Camm recipe and sort of adjust it, bring the juniper up a little bit and bring the ginseng down. And that didn't really work. I had to kind of completely start from scratch, and so I actually started with a 4 botanical gin. So I kind of started with things like Campari, which are only 4 botanicals. So I kind of started to try and recreate those recipes, and then sort of build up. I wanted it to be a complex gin with the same amount of botanicals as Camm. So it's got that a similar complexity, but in a London Dry format.
Okay, and then with what you've already told me and your level of obsession, so we say, I'm sure you've compared it to everything else. So you've ended up with something unique, have you? And what's the flavour profile?
The thing is with, I think where I struggle with London Dry has got quite a tight frame. The best gins are London Dry gins in style. So the definition is that juniper has to be the main flavour. Fine. And there's lots of other kind of rules and regulations about how it should be produced. But essentially, if it doesn't taste of juniper, it's not a London Dry. So you can't start adding weird and wonderful things in, which is why there's a big rant in the industry about pink gins, strawberry gins, all the rest of it. They're not really gins because they don't taste of juniper. But of course, consumers like it, and there's a market, and all those the rules get bent and everything else. So how do you make a London Dry different from the others without using really obscure ingredients and that's really hard. So you can add lots of numbers, or you can reduce the numbers, or you can do different types of distillation. You got junipers from the hills over here, or the fields over here, wherever. So it's kind of, you need to weave a story into it and sort of have some credible back history or integrity to it.
So what's particularly unique about it then with the final product?
I said about not using strange ingredients. I use ginseng in it as well, so there's still that kind of ginseng element. It's complex in that the juniper is still the main flavour, but I've used flowers and roots and leaves and nuts and berries and bark and spices to sort of complement the natural flavours of juniper. There's lots of facets to juniper, and you can accentuate those with lavender, for example, or a little bit of woodiness and a bit of spiciness and some citrus elements. The juniper is the main flavour, and all those other ingredients support it. And if you look at the label design, I'm just pulling up so you can see it. You can see it on the podcast.
You can describe it.
But hopefully there'll be a picture of it. All of those colours represent. I sort of always use a bit of my artistic skill here as well. And that when I taste in colour. I don't have full synesthesia, but when I taste a flavour, I imagine shapes and I imagine colours. So I've kind of put the how I taste this gin is the colour of the labels. I wanted that colour to represent each of those botanical categories and the way they kind of merge together to form one flavour. Nice. It's 45 ingredients, but it's a London Dry gin.
Yeah. And I like that. And as I'm looking at the label, presumably then we're talking about that sort of darker at the bottom gets lighter towards the top. I'm presuming the berries and the leafy flavours towards the top goes back to that tree sort of root analogy
exactly.
that you gave earlier, which is cool. And that's why I love having that arty background, because you're fundamentally representing something very complicated.
Yeah.
Very simply and very subtly in a way that, 99.9% more than that of people looking at the bottle are never going to get it, but it's nice that there's a story there with some authenticity when you want to explain it, which is cool. We touched on the kind of growth of the general aperitif market and the impact that's had some way in a positive way. One of the other growths, and we also touched on the fact that people maybe drink less now, but hopefully try and drink things that are more interesting, and there's a market to go premium. But the low alcohol or non-alcoholic movement around that kind of botanicals and aperitif has always been a thing, I suppose, in the last couple of years. What's your thought on that?
On non-alcoholic aperitifs? Yeah, I mean, the aperitif by definition is an alcoholic drink, so there are a few new and very good quality, I should add, non-alcoholic aperitifs. I think actually that no alcohol seems to work much better with aperitifs because you can add loads of flavours, you can add loads of herbs and things. So, for example, something don't dissolve into water like juniper. Is very hard to extract the flavours of the juniper without using alcohol, because the alcohol is a solvent. It's a thing that can help separate the oils out and releases the flavour. So it's hard to make non-alcoholic gin, but you can make non-alcoholic other things with different botanicals. So the aperitif is good because it's a herbal. You can add sugar to it, you can add bitterness to it. There are more flavours to go on, and there are some great aperitifs that have launched that haven't got any alcohol in them at all. Technically not aperitifs, but it's fine. We have to. The industry's changing so quickly, and consumers' tastes are changing so quickly that I think we also need to be a bit more. It's fine. It's cool. It's like low alcohol gin, for example. There isn't any. There are only low alcohol gins. You can't call it gin unless it's 37.5%. Why not? Why shouldn't there be?
Yeah. Okay.
If alcohol is a bad thing and we should be drinking less, why can we not make gin at 30%? There are these rules that are in place, and they're very hard to change.
Okay. And how much of it is important? So again, with your knowledge of the science, I suppose, but that kind of getting the palate ready, how important is alcohol as part of that process in actually kind of getting the body ready? Does it play a part, or is it not relevant?
I mean, the alcohol for me is the thing that carries the flavour better than water does. It's a carrier. The alcohol extracts the flavours in the botanicals. It preserves them, and it just delivers the mouthfeel and the length of finish in a different way. And it's a hard thing to describe, but flavoured waters or other things that have there are non-alcoholic things that don't that are lots very tasty that don't have alcohol in them, but there's just something about alcohol that delivers that flavour and also obviously helps you relax.
And in the same way, presumably, as perfumes and aftershave and stuff, in the fact it carries the aromas in a different way than just another liquid, I guess. So, yeah. Okay, so you've created this amazing product with such a great story behind it. How do you get it out there? How do you get people to know? Because what I've noticed is two things, I suppose. One, you've got to sell what people want to buy, and two, there's too many people in the world who don't care where stuff comes from and what that story is. So you're aiming at a niche. Most people just go, I'm hot, I'm thirsty, I want a drink, and they don't get as geeky as I would love people to get. Yeah. And how do you educate people around that?
So I do education in trade, so I go and train bartenders. So I kind of talk about the aperitif culture. I go and I talk to them about the styles of aperitif and how they're made and the history and wine based and spirit based and all the rest of it. So I do a uber geeky session for the trade, and then for consumer it's through press, through social media, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. But actually at the moment there's a lot of people talking about aperitifs anyway, so there's quite a lot of aperitif chat, which is good. But when I started there was none, so it's like I had to really explain it and just had to keep explaining it. So there is still a lot of education to be done on that, but it's certainly moving in the right direction. And Aperol have really helped with that.
And then the business side of it. So you come from an arty background. I love the fact that you've turned your arty background into a spreadsheet of the world's botanicals.
Yeah.
There seems like a contradiction there already.
Yeah.
But now you've got to take it to the next stage, where presumably you've got marketing and brand and finance and all that kind of stuff. So how's that journey been?
Interesting. It's steep sort of learning curve for me, just having to like build models and cash flows and all those sort of things. I mean, that is not the bit that I enjoy. But obviously it's one of those things that as a business owner you need to get your head around, and as I sort of take some joy in crafting these beautiful spreadsheets with all these cells that work when you type this number in here, and so I have kind of got into it. I'm definitely not a natural spreadsheeter, but yeah, I'm a whiz at Excel now. That's you have to, don't you? Accounting software and all the rest of it. It's it's part of the business.
Okay. Yeah. So now to actually get people drinking the product, because it would be it's easy to come up with these incredible things and them to be wonderful, but for people fundamentally not to buy them, I suppose. So what's the route to market now? Is it predominantly going to bar people? Are you getting into the shops? What's the biggest source of sales?
We are in Harvey Nichols and those kind of places. Ford and Masons and whatever. We don't not in the supermarkets yet. We're still a bit niche for the supermarkets. But we sell in lots of independents and things, but we're still sort of 90% trade. So you'll find us in good cocktail bars, good restaurants, hotels, etc.
Okay.
Some of the chains, although we're not in Wetherspoons or any of those places, we're in Bill's and Hawksmoor and Hicks and those kind of ETM Group, Drake and Morgan, those sort of bars.
Amazing.
So yeah, we've got some great.
It's a good uptake. Because how long now since the product was launched?
8 years.
8 years. Okay, good. And continuing to gather more kind of traction over time. Is the word getting spread?
As the industry grows and the competition hots up, not growing at the rate that we would like, but that's part of business, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You have to roll with punches and adapt and survive. So yeah, there's a huge amount of competition now, not just in the aperitif sector, gin sector, whiskey sector, rum sector, just brands coming in every week with big marketing budgets, and it's harder to cut through. Yeah, and we still do. We still got we've got a loyal following, and we still get press sort of dropping in and things. We don't have a PR full time. Bits come in here and there, and we're fairly well known within the with the press, so it's quite nice as well.
Yeah,
we've done lots of events and lots of things in the past, so we've sort of from sort of foodie shows up and down the country. It's Taste of London. We had a little bar, a street feast for a while. So we've done lots of stuff, so we're still kind of out and about. And,
okay.
Yeah, going live next week, big trade show next week.
Yeah, huge. So looking back then, last 10, 15 years, is there anything that you would have done differently with the knowledge that you've now got on this journey?
Absolutely. Well, with the power of hindsight, definitely. I mean, if I could go back to the launch, I would have started it calling it Camm & Sons because I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't have had the issue with the legals.
Exactly. So it would have been Camm & Sons, British aperitif from the start. What else would we done differently? I think it took us a long time to kind of focus on our signature serve, and that's the key. Is like what do you do with this product? You do this with it. Stick it with tonic. It's sort of like it's got to be that easy. And actually, coming from a cocktail background, I designed it to be versatile. So it's great in loads of different cocktails. You daiquiris and mojitos and all sorts of different twists on classics. So we sort of came out going like, look at all these great cocktails you can make. But actually, what we should have been doing is like, look at this. This is the cocktail to have, and it's very hard to do that when it just works so well with so much stuff, and you want to show how versatile it can be. Whereas we should have just gone in. This is the British spirits. This is how you make it, and this is how you sell it. These are the just a real focus on one drink and one serve. So that'd be my
And is that
wisdom. That's what we do now.
That's what you do now.
I mean, we obviously still go into cocktail bars and talk about how versatile it is, but we just bang on about the British spirits.
Yeah.
Because especially when the sun's shining, it's like, right, go out and drink British spirits. Yeah. It's easy to make. This is what you need for it. Here are the bars that stock here. Go and drink it.
It's huge. I mean, we restaurant on the beach, and the Aperol spritzer is a big seller. Is there a big price difference between yours and the major players?
It's about, depending on where you get it, it's about double the price.
Yeah.
but it's 3 times stronger.
Oh, really?
You do the maths.
Okay. Yeah.
So you put less in it, basically. You put less into a roast beer. So actually, like GP, we're talking restaurant GP wise, it's not far off. It's always going to be a premium because it's a small, locally produced product as opposed to a mass-produced one. So yeah, the GPs are not bad. We always sell it as the upsell. Aperol spritz, no problem at all. It's got its place. This is a bit more premium. You charge an extra £1 for it or whatever. And people that like Aperol spritz like this.
Yeah.
A lot of them prefer it.
Excellent.
I don't say too much about it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I love Aperol spritz.
I think hopefully I'm going to try it in a minute. Which will be great. So, and it's a nice hot sunny day, so it's perfect for it. Which bit of the job now then gives you the most pleasure?
I think yesterday I was doing training but for a bunch of guys who don't know the product, don't really care who I am or whatever, and then it's just another product that they're selling on their menu. Well, I'm coming in to talk to them, and I sort of they're all sitting around, and I'm talking to them about an hour, in detail about the history of the Italian, aperitif culture and how Cinchona bark has been, harvested from these trees and all the rest of it. And then at the end, you get a round of applause, and everyone's like, "Oh, great drinks, really love this," and they get really inspired, and that's always really nice to see. I think, or someone, someone overseas is posting a picture of it, and the country that I didn't even realise had it is posting a picture of their drinks they're making with it, and those sort of things are nice to see that it's working, and we're getting there. Global domination is taking a little bit longer than we thought, but it's happening. So that's
bit
nice.
by bit. It feels like it will be, the long game success. Just in the fact that I can't imagine many people are going to try and replicate it with the same level of dedication, authenticity, and go through the same journey. And people like that. People love to know that there's some authenticity behind a product, don't they? And that some crazy guy in his flat has got 100 ingredients and tested them all out to that level. Because most people take shortcuts.
Sticking about with botanicals.
Which I think is great. So people who've heard this, I'm sure will want to try it. Where's the easiest place then to go? Can they order it online, or is it best to get down the shops?
Probably online. If you live in London, it's easier to buy. But Amazon. If you go to the website, actually, there's a few links there. Drinkshop.com, Master of Malt, Amazon have it. And lots of bars have it as well. We don't have all the bars that are listed on there. We started, and then just got too many, and we just couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So
good. That's a good thing.
Good cocktail bars will know it.
Yeah.
And should have it.
What's your website address?
CammandSons.com.
Okay, perfect. Any favourite social media channel where people can follow what's going on?
Camm and Sons on Instagram, or Camm and Sons on Twitter. Very easy to find as long as you spell it right. Kamm for mother. ANDSONS. Easy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Well, look, just a thank you really for being geeky enough to take it to an extreme and for what you've created. It's brilliant, and thanks for sparing the time to chat about it. And best of luck. Good. Last thing, any plans to add anything else?
Hey, always working on stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing I can talk about at the moment.
Okay. Well, good luck. We'll keep an eye on it. So thank you for your time. Cheers. So there you have it. You have reached the end of another episode of the Humans of Hospitality podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please go and visit our website, humansofhospitality.co.uk, for the show notes and extra episodes and information. And whilst you're there, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and to receive free materials all about the humans behind our incredible industry. Lastly, if you could subscribe, rate and review this podcast, you will be massively helping me out, and it would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll be launching another podcast in just 7 days' time. Cheers.